We will call to order the regular board meeting of October 18th, 2021. And we'd like to welcome you to a meeting of the Buchanan Community Schools Board of Education. Again, all of our meetings have been posted on our district website and our central office and in each district school building. And tonight's agenda has been posted not only on our websites, but they've also been emailed out to all of the board members as well, and to those who are subscribers to the Buchanan Community Board of Education there. The board members do receive the agenda and the other supporting materials ahead of time to be prepared for the meeting in order to be informed, as well as to be prepared for information or questions that may come forward in order to provide a full discussion on the agenda items in order to vote on those as they come about in the performance of their duties in their office. Again, this meeting is of the Board of Education and public for the purposes of conducting the school district's business. It is not considered a public community meeting. We do have a time for that prepared in our agenda during item H in that document. And with that said as well, if there was a person that was wanting to speak, then they need to speak, fill out a speaker's card and provide that to the front. With that being said, let's go ahead and do roll call.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Miss Berry.
Here.
Mr. Carlson had a family emergency. Miss Lesh here. Dr. Carlin.
Here.
Miss Ryder.
Here.
And Dr. Burnett.
Here. All right, moving on to agenda item C. May we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion that the agenda for the board meeting of October 18th, 2021 be adopted as written.
Support.
All right. Roll call.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Miss Berry.
Yes.
Miss Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin.
Yes.
Miss Ryder.
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett.
Yes. And moving on to agenda item D, recognition of visitors. Again, we'd like to welcome you all, and we do have a sign-in sheet. If you would be willing to do that for us, we'd greatly appreciate that. Also, Ms. Robinson, is there any special guests?
Yes, we do have Cindy Scott here, who will be presenting our audit tonight, so she is here tonight on behalf of the district.
Very good. All right, and with that said, moving on to agenda item E, presentations.
Are you ready for me? Nobody will be ready for me. Thanks for having me here to update you on the budget. It's obviously one of my favorite things to be talking about, and I apologize if I bore you because some people don't seem to think it's as cool as I do for some unknown reason. So you did get an awful lot of information from me just recently, so I just wanted to share with you with regards to what all that information means and break it down just a little bit further for you. So you had received like 35 pages or something like that of like line items, issues, and such like that, of which I'm presenting on the screen right now a breakdown of that, which shows exactly what happened between the original budget and this upcoming first quarter budget. So you're going to see variances between the the original budget and this budget right here. And this particular sheet, which is just your revenue and expenditures for the first quarter, will show you everything that changed throughout that time frame. I would go through this right now, but I'm actually going to be going through it a little bit later, so that way, I don't want to give all the excitement away to all of that. The large document to this slightly smaller document to the next document that I'm going to be pulling up, which is going to be the budget amendment that you will hopefully be approving a little bit later in the evening. So all of that information flows into this right here, which will be all updated with the current information that we have as of October 18th. To give us a good feel for where we are with our finances for Buchanan schools. So with that being said, I'm going to take us to Oh, that's not even showing up, is it? I have to stop sharing. I'm going to let you know that math is a lot easier than technology sometimes, so I will do this, and I will go to share my summary. Window and right here. Let's see if that shows up, okay. So the summary, and this is just a 30,000 view, 30,000 foot view for you to see, and I'm not sure how this works because it's not doing what I want it to do. But, okay, now I kind of wish I had paper copies. So going through the revenue portion of everything, our local revenues, they increased by $5,600, and that's just because we took the non-homestead values that were given to us by the varying community equalization offices, and we were able to get exact numbers with regards to that, knowing full well that that money right there is pulled away from the state when they decide that they're going to give us our $8,700 per kid. They always back out the non-homestead. So then that's going to lead us up to our state revenues. And our state revenues increased significantly, and that's because we went from $8,111 per kid to $8,700 per pupil. So we look at that, and then we have to obviously look at what our pupil account is. And with count day that had just recently passed, we had budgeted 1,520 students, and we are currently looking at, I have in the budget 1,510. Though we are still finalizing those numbers, so that's something that could still change down the road. I do not have any changes to the federal revenue currently, and just waiting for some further information. All of our title money is solid right now. It's just the other federal programs that we need to finish up between now and you'll have it by the next budget update, which will be in January. So that will then move us to other revenues, no changes. From an expenditure standpoint, our instruction, the amount of money increased by $235,982. Probably don't need to be giving you exact dollar amounts, and I don't know, oh, there we go. So all of these changes are the solidifying the staff and making sure that we have the correct staff in there, in addition to it having all of the salaries and benefits and the pay increases that have been now added into the budget. So everything from the original budget to now has all the new staff in place. All of the staff that exited are also out of it, as well as all of the pay raises that took place in that time frame. Then that leads us to support services, which increased $24,000, and then I just started breaking out from a 30,000 foot view, so you could see some of the bigger items that touch the support services. In this particular case, we have $20,000 for advertising. $5,100 was added for an athletic trainer fee that was not in the original budget. We also had $7,500 added for athletic supplies. We had wrestling and cheer mat. $20,000 was added for Bearing Risa accounts payable services, and then from that, we also had $73,827 that was deducted from the expenditures because we are using Bearing Risa to provide accounts payable, and so we no longer need the accounts payable BVA salary and benefits any longer. So, with that being said, if I can get my screen to go where I want it to. We also have $5,000 that was added to the newsletter production, and then just the remainder is related to salary increases for the support staff. We didn't have any transfers no transfers are changing, which leads us to just for this first quarter budget, the revenues have been increased by $541,625. The expenditures also increased by $260,849. So that just means for this quarter alone, our fund equity would have been increased by $280,776. So that then putting that into perspective, for the full year, we are still projecting a decrease in our fund equity by $110,967. Our new projected fund equity for June 30, 2022, that's crazy to say, is $3,706,427, or 19.21% of our current projected expenditures. And if you want to look at it from a revenue side, it's 19.32% of our current projected revenues. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that I can answer for you. No.
Any questions?
Thank you guys very much for having me here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
The audit process,
Okay,
yep.
you're ready.
Thank you for letting me go first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I see some new faces on the board, so I want to take a minute and introduce myself. My name is Cindy Scott. I'm a partner with Stevenson and Company, and everything we do firm-wide that has anything to do with the school district runs through me. So whether that's an audit of a financial statement, like what we did for Buchanan Schools, or other agreed-upon procedures, which I've done for you in the past, or business manager services, compliance testing for the state, anything school district goes through my hands. So this was my second year doing the financial statement audit for Buchanan Schools. And since I do see some new faces, I want to walk through a few things a little bit slower than what I would do if it was a completely returning board, but I also don't want to bore you. So I'm going to use the PowerPoint instead of going through page by page of the bound report, but if I skip over something that you want more information on, please don't hesitate to stop. Funds, we combine them together for one big set of financial data, and then we also incorporate into that information the long-term activity, so your land, your building, your equipment, any debt that you have out there, and it adds in all of that big picture, long-term view. So if you were thinking about it from a business perspective, it would almost be like looking at your net worth as a school district. So when we look at those government-wide financial statements on page 10, you're going to see that your ending net position does show as a deficit of $13,548,335. Now, there are two big reasons for that. One is the net pension liability, and the other is the OPEB liability, which is the other post-employment benefits, which is anything other than a pension, so it would be the health insurance that the employees receive. I cannot stress enough to you that those two liabilities are the largest liabilities on your financial statements. It only shows up on page 10, and this is an estimate that comes from the state through their actuary. So unfortunately, no one in this room has any control over what those numbers are. Every year, the state will have an actuarial valuation done of those liabilities. They'll come up with that multi-billion-dollar liability, and then they divvy it out to all the school districts, and then that is what your liability ends up being that we have to record. And because it's based on a lot of assumptions, like at what age the average employee is going to retire, at what age they're going to pass away, at what investment rate are we going to earn that return on the investments that are being held at the state, there's a lot of assumptions in there. So it will change drastically from year to year. So as of June 30th, 2021, your net pension liability was $27,939,351. And your OPEB liability was $4,385,039. So you can see that those two right there are what are making up that deficit. Any questions on that? So big changes from last year, and now I'm talking government-wide. I'm looking at big picture view. One of the big changes you're going to see if you were going to look at your 2020 financials compared to 2021 is that you did refund a bond this year. And when you had your 2021 refunding bond, it paid off all of the old bond with the exception of 2 years. 2 years stayed out there, and then everything got rolled forward into that new bond. So that is a big piece, and we do have a footnote disclosure in the financials explaining all the details of that bond. On the revenue side, and I apologize, that's awfully small, so hopefully it's on your screen too. But on the revenue side, revenues increased. Let's see here. There we go. Revenues increased about $1,205,000. The biggest piece of that increase is all the federal COVID money that's coming in. You received $873,000 of new federal COVID money during the year. You had an additional $174,000 of Great Start Readiness dollars that were used this year. Your overall state aid increased $336,000. And then Gatsby 84 came into effect this year, and those that were on the board last year heard me talking about it a year ago. Gatsby 84 is the federal requirement to take all of your student group funds, so class of 2021, band, and all those different groups, and to put it into your governmental funds of the financial statement. So because now that's part of your funds, we have to show the revenue and the expense. So because of that, your revenues increased $267,000, and food service dollars increased $77,000. Now, offsetting all of those increases, you had a decrease in your at-risk dollars of $237,000, a decrease in your special education state funding of $80,000, a decrease in your vocational education shared tuition revenue of $37,000, and then your other local dollars, interest income, kid care revenue, transportation revenue combined decreased $144,000. Expenses. One of the big changes on the expense side is that your wages and related benefits increased $1,023,000. There's a few things affecting that. First of all, you brought your custodians back in-house. They were previously through purchase service, so you're going to see your purchase services go down and the wages go up. You also had an increase of a few FTEs, full-time equivalents on the staffing side outside of the custodians, and then there were also step increases as well as 2% pay increases. Increases related to your COVID grant technology and PPE type expenses increased $374,000. The student activity expenses related to Gatsby 84 that we just talked about increased $277,000. All of the fluctuations in expenses related to the OPEB and the net pension liability fluctuating, those decreased $630,000. That just shows you how much of an assumption that is, because that's a $630,000 decrease along with all your payments being made. You had a decrease in depreciation expense of $117,000, a decrease in your community services and athletic expenses as a result of COVID not allowing things to happen of $88,000. Purchase services went down $37,000. We mentioned that the custodians went in-house, but then offsetting that was a few different purchase services you brought in, contracting your business services with the RESA. You had some training costs. Our agreed upon procedures engagement was in last year, so those are some offsetting decreases there, or I'm sorry, increases. And then your food costs decreased $23,000. Any questions on the revenue or expense changes? We're going to drill down into the general fund in a minute, but big picture view. So just to show you, I'm not going to beat this too hard, but the net pension liability and the OPEB liability, big estimates, they're going to fluctuate. Just to show you how they changed, your net pension liability increased from last year over $1 million, and that's with you paying in lots and lots of dollars every single month into that retirement system. It still went up. Your proportionate share of that liability actually decreased, so you're owning a smaller percentage of the state liability, but you still went up. On the OPEB side, your proportionate share increased, but you were able to decrease that liability $1,429,000. So on page 12, we start the fund financial statement. So again, this is going to be what you're more familiar with looking at. It's going to be on that month-to-month basis. It's more cash basis, and it's what you're going to budget in accordance with. We're only showing one fund as a major fund, meaning that it's handling the majority of your activity, and that's the general fund. And then your non-major funds would be the food service fund, the student activities fund, the sinking fund, and the 2013 building and site bond. So looking at the ending fund balance, and I know Brian was just projecting for you what you're looking at for the end of 2021-22, so we're talking back June 30, 2021, and your general fund ended at $4,187,533. Now, if you recall from last year, your fund balance is made up of 5 levels. The first is non-spendable. It means you've already spent it. It could be inventory, it could be a prepaid expense, but there's not cash in the bank for you to spend. It's already been spent. And you did have non-spendable of $2,562. And then you would have restricted, but you don't have any restricted dollars in your general fund, but that would be if by legislation or grantor the dollars were legally restricted for a specific purpose, you'd have to restrict those dollars and set them aside. Then you would have committed, which you do not have committed dollars in your general fund either, but a committed fund balance would be if the board, by formal board motion or resolution, commits dollars for a specific purpose. Those would be set aside in the financial statements. The next step down is assigned, and you do have assigned dollars. Assigned is very similar to a commitment, but it can happen all the way up until the issuance of the audit report, where with a commitment, it has to be done by June 30th. And for the assigned dollars, when you approved your 21-22 original budget, you approved your expenses to exceed the revenues. So by definition, you assigned some of your ending fund balance to cover next year's expenses. So you had assigned dollars of $391,742. So then what's left is what you have available to budget, what you have available for operations. And your unassigned fund balance was $3,793,229. That makes up 22.2% of your current year expenditures. Last year, you were at 21.3%. So you went up a little bit. That's great. You're right where, on an audit end, I usually say 15 to 20% is what makes me feel comfortable. What I want to encourage you to keep in mind, and I haven't spoken with Carrie or Brian to find out what the game plan is for your ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 dollars, but school districts have a lot of federal COVID money coming in over the next few years. As you determine how you're going to spend those ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 dollars, I encourage you to think long-term, because the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 dollars are not going to continue forever. You're only looking at 2-3 years of those dollars coming in. So think long-term. If you're going to use those dollars to create positions, if you're going to use those dollars to create something that's going to have a continued long-term expense associated with it, commit some of your general fund dollars to those purposes so that you can continue to pay for those programs, those positions, whatever it is that you're going to use those dollars for. Start thinking about maybe you want to commit some of that fund balance to it so that way you don't get into a position where your fund balance starts going the wrong way. Any questions on your fund balance? So looking at the general fund, I just like to look at a recap of the last 3 years of what type of dollars you have coming in. And you can see on this graph that your local dollars really have stayed really consistent. There were some drops this year for transportation costs and student activity costs and interest costs, but not that much of a drop. But check out your state aid and your federal sources. The federal sources just really skyrocketed in comparison, and that's strictly COVID. And then the state dollars, you had a higher foundation allowance, you had some increased GSRP dollars, offset by lower at-risk dollars. To look at it this way, 75.73% of your general fund revenues are coming from the state. So that is definitely where you're relying on, with the federal sources being at 7.9%, local sources, which would be your property taxes for the most part, 14.5%, interdistrict at 1.46%, and other at 0.4%. On the expense side, you can see the salaries and wages going up as well as the employee benefits and taxes. We typically see those increase at the same rates. Again, custodians coming on board, pay increases, step increases, as well as a few additional FTEs. You can see the supplies had a jump this year, and that's directly related to the COVID grant type expenses. And then the capital outlay, you had some additional maintenance and repair costs that were coming through ESSER. So what makes up your expenses? 83% is your salaries, benefits, and taxes. That's where your costs are. It's in your people. That's what I see at every school district I go into. Typically 75 to 85% is right where I see everybody at, and that is where you are. Purchase services at 7.62%. It looks like supplies are a little bit lower than that, followed by capital outlay and other. Any questions on the expenses? So then you get into the notes to the financial statements. These begin on page 16. There's a lot of information there. It talks through how you handle different classifications for accounts. There's only a couple I want to point out. First off, I mentioned Gatsby 84, having to pull those student activity groups into your fund financial statements. That had to get implemented this year. So we had to, you'll see that there's a prior period adjustment to pull that information in, and we also have the footnote disclosure explaining how that works. Now coming for next year is Gatsby 87. Gatsby 87 is a lease legislation where basically they're eliminating the whole concept of a capital lease and an operating lease, where currently it only makes it to your financial statements if it's a capital lease and you're going to walk away with the asset at the end. They're getting rid of that and saying, nope, if you have a contract that's for more than a year for something, for a good of some sort, it has to be capitalized as a right-to-use asset and a right-to-use liability. So the homework assignment over the next year is just to start tracking what contracts do we have out there that are for more than a year, because we will have to retroactively implement this standard next year. Now, we did have 3 prior period adjustments that we had to book, meaning we're restating your beginning fund balance for activity that would have been recorded in a previous period had it been reported correctly. One of those is for the Gatsby 84, pulling those student activity groups in, and that was $373,734. And then the other piece is that when you went to purchase the bus that we're going to talk about in the next footnote, it was a subsequent event after year end, you purchased a bus that was being leased. That was previously being recorded as an installment purchase agreement, which is what was dictated to us from the leaseor. Well, once the bus was purchased, we were able to see that it really wasn't an installment purchase agreement. So it's being restated. We're decreasing the fund balance for the portion that was previously recorded as an asset and decreasing it for the portion that was showing as a liability. So we're eliminating them. So then on the next slide, on March 15, 2021, the school district entered into a commitment in the amount of $53,000 to purchase bus 9 off of the operating lease. Any questions on that? Page 44 shows required supplementary information. All I'm pointing out here is that the state of Michigan, schools as a whole, their net pension liability was 59.7% funded at June 30, 2021. A year ago, it was 60.31%, so school districts as a whole are going the wrong way. But on the OPEB liability, it did go the correct way. It went from 48.46% last year to 59.44% this year. So the OPEB liability is decreasing, but the net pension liability, the state as a whole, increased. For the budget, I know you just talked through the budget with Brian. I don't need to go through all these numbers, but what I want to point out is, as part of the audit, we have to look at what did you originally budget for, what was your final budget at the end of the year, and then where did you end up? What the state wants to know is, are you using your budget as a management tool as it's designed? And you are. If you look at the variance percentages, on the revenue side, you were within 1.03%. That's excellent. On the expense side, 2.71%. So that's a great job to the administrative team, to the board. Great job staying on top of all of that activity. It's been quite a year of transition, so to me, that was very impressive. Page 49 gives you additional information. It combines those non-major funds that we talked about earlier. And then what I tend to think is probably the most valuable piece of information in your report is the individual fund schedules. In the back of the report, you're going to find where we take the general fund and we break it down by department, and we show you what did you spend last year, what did you spend this year, and what did you budget in accordance with. And that way, if you want to drill down to elementary school supplies, you can. And it's just a good way if you're wanting to figure out where might we be able to save or spend or do more. Questions on the financials before I jump over to federal dollars? So then the thinly bound report is the single audit. A single audit is required when you spend more than $750,000 in federal dollars within 1 year. And your federal dollars during this year was $2,251,778. So we're required to test 40% of that. So we tested your child nutrition cluster and your ESSER 1 COVID dollars. We did have one single audit finding that we are required to report to the state, and it is the same finding as what we reported a year ago. What it is you're not allowed to carry a fund balance that's in excess of 3 months operating expenditures in your food service program. And you have carried an excess fund balance for multiple years. I believe this is the 3rd or 4th year, to my knowledge. What's happened is this finding is really across the state right now, because in light of COVID, everybody's getting free meals. And so the federal funding coming in for food service programs is through the roof, and school districts are not able to spend it as quickly. So what you're required to do is submit a plan to the state that says, this is what we project we're going to be over, here's how we're going to spend it down, will you approve our plan? And the district did do that, they just didn't approve enough. I believe they had $126,730 of excess approved, and their ending excess was $188,805. So that left $62,075. So it's a good problem to have if there's going to be a finding. So now you just need to come up with that game plan of how are you going to spend those dollars and come up with a new plan to submit to the state. I believe for 21, they've granted a waiver across the board to all school districts to give you 1 year to spend it, but you have to spend it by June 30, 22. Finally is the management letter. This is loosely enclosed in the back of the thickly bound report, and there's 2 appendices to this letter. The first appendix is the required canned communication. Whose responsibility are the financial statements? They're yours, as the board, those charged with governance. It's my responsibility to issue an opinion on the financials, but the numbers themselves are the school district's responsibility. There were no disagreements with management. We're not aware of you consulting with other auditors for a better opinion. There's no material misstatements that have been ignored or passed on, and there's no other important information outside of Appendix 2. So then Appendix 2 is our opportunity to present recommendations for improvement. And there's 3 different levels of recommendations that we can give. If there's something that's a significant aspect of the financial statements and it's reasonably possible that something could go wrong, then we have to evaluate if it did, could it be material or not? And if it could be material, it would be a material weakness. And if it wouldn't be material, it would be a significant deficiency. And we did have one material weakness, and this was financial statement preparation. And I want to stress, it sounds worse than it is. What that is it's a disclaimer to say there's a risk that you could rely too much on me as the auditor, and I could make a mistake that you would not catch. Now, the good news is I think you have 2 great people in your business office who are going to catch anything any mistake I potentially make. but they were brand new this year. So this year was a little bit tricky. I don't anticipate this comment having to be replayed next year. But for this year, with the turnover and with everything going on, I thought it was really important that we put that disclaimer in there to remind you that they are your financial statements. We had no significant deficiencies. And then for other matters, I already talked about the food service fund equity and having to spend that down. And the other piece is we tested the daycare revenue this year. And we found some gaps in the controls, and so we worked through with the daycare director on how to close those gaps. And the biggest piece was being able to tie individual payments to individual children that are going through the Kid Care program. So we worked with them on that, and we'll retest it next year to see if those have been implemented. Exciting news for last year, we had 4 comments that we made last year, and 3 of the 4 were corrected. The segregation of duties on the athletics and on the student activity funds both appear to be corrected. We did not retest the student activity funds because with COVID there wasn't much going on, but based on policy and procedure alone, it appears that that has been corrected. But the athletics we did test without any issue at all. We had some issues a year ago with competitive bidding. It appears by policy and practice that that's been corrected, but there were also no projects this year that required the bidding for us to test. So we'll definitely keep our eyes open on that moving forward. And then the district website had some transparency pieces missing last year, and when we tested it this year, everything was there. So the only repeat finding is the food service fund equity. Questions for me?
Thank you, Cindy. I'd just like to recognize our business office for doing a really good job in the state
Absolutely.
of transition. And Brian and Carrie done a marvelous job.
I absolutely agree.
Good. I just want to say I appreciate your, all your information, because sitting up here for 10 years now, it's been, your last 2 years have been best for me, so.
Thank
for
you.
understanding the whole report and everything.
There's a lot of information there, so it's hard to find what level to try to provide you with that information without having it put you to
give great
sleep.
examples that help relay it back to where it needs to go, so I
Thank
just
you.
want to say thank you.
Well, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for having me tonight, members of the board. Thank you, community members, for having me tonight. My name is Mark Fry. For those of you that don't know me in the room, I am the director of CTE, which is Career and Tech Education, Buchanan Virtual Academy, and the athletic coordinator here at Buchanan. I'm going to kind of go through a lot of material, so bear with me. I apologize if it takes too long. Athletically, we've had a great start to the school year. Fall sports were underway. We're currently approaching districts, if not in them, for most of the sports. Soccer actually finished their run tonight at Watervliet. They've made it to the semifinal in districts. Cross country is going into districts next week. Volleyball has conference tournament this weekend, and tennis finished up about a week ago with the MHSA playoffs, where we finished 5th in the room, but 4th in the conference. So that was good for us. We were excited about that. A couple of highlights that I want to point out, though, that we don't see on paper is our roster sizes this year. We had a huge push in athletics over the summer with getting everyone in the weight room and just encouraging athletics overall. And if you look at all our rosters this year, every sport either grew or were right where we were the year before. So that was exciting. Big improvements were in tennis. It grew about by 10 athletes. Middle school football's up to around 40. So just in general, it was an exciting year to see more kids participating in athletics. So a couple highlights within the department. One of the I put my notes are a little. We had a cross-country meet here at home. We usually do run them out at Redbud, and we do want to reach out to them again and do that again. We just wanted to give them time with COVID to recoup some of their revenue and not be stepping on toes. So we hosted our first home meet here in quite a long time, and it was a huge success. We had a lot of alumni, state qualifiers from the years past come back and help, community members. The town of Buchanan really helped and stepped up blocking off roads and getting the park ready and things like that, and coaches were great. Another one highlight was, excuse me, we got power out to the press box at the soccer field, which, if you know, Brian Pruitt was running a cord out there when he was coaching. So very exciting. I want to thank Ryan Franzek and Al, kind of heading up that project. We were reached out about that, and I just wasn't able to put it on my plate at the time, but they ran with it and got it done, and I'm really excited about that. And walking out there and flipping on a switch doesn't sound like it's very important, but it's quite needed. We also improved the stereo system out there. It was broke. We are looking to start hosting more district events here, and you know, we couldn't really host the last week's regional, our district round one real well with national anthems and things like that with the sound system we had. So we updated it, and it sounds really good now. And you can hear the national anthem all the way at the player side, which is what we needed to be able to do. We are looking, or we have begun the purchase of a new wrestling mat and cheer mat. We got the district bid to host team districts here this year, which is exciting. But with that, we needed the new mat, so that's why we did that. We also were using Niles cheer mat for years, and they want it back, so that's why we had to get our own. And so that's why those new purchases were on the slide up there. But we're excited about those, and we think that opens up a lot of new possibilities for us, maybe even an individual district wrestling match, which would be a big event for our programs. Also with that, we are hosting basketball team districts this year, which is exciting. Anytime you can be on that center stage and host the communities around us is a good life for our programs. Sorry, just checking to make sure I didn't leave anything else. So as we are heading into winter sports, transportation's obviously finalized, and we're getting ready to go with that. We are also moving toward our spring scheduling already. We're about halfway done with that, and already on to fall scheduling as we move forward. So we got things going in the right direction. We're excited about the schedules we're putting out there are going to be competitive for our athletic programs, and our coaches are geared up for their seasons as we approach them. BVA-wise, switching hats here, enrollment has closed for the semester. We finished at 110 students in BVA and 27 students in Step Up. It is less than last year, but obviously COVID has kind of maybe slowed down a little bit, so that I think people are wanting to be in school, which is good. Still higher than the year prior when there was no COVID. But, you know, I think we want to make sure we're providing an experience for every student, and if they're more comfortable being virtual, then that's why we're accepting them for our program. So we're excited that through Count Month that we're getting all the two-way communications that we're required to get by state law, and that's going really well. CTE-wise, we are running full steam ahead. Our teachers are excited more than ever because we are allowed to bring industry in this year, which last year we couldn't, and that made things challenging. Our rosters are finalized and sent to the state. Another point to point out, just like our athletic programs, our rosters have grown this year. Digital multimedia, for example, was one program that had 6 students, and now we're up to 15 students. So that's really exciting for our programs. Culinary is full like every year. Sports medicine is full like every year. Cisco did see a bit of a dip. We are attributing that to not being able to get into other schools and recruit. Cisco is a confusing title, so people don't know what that really means. So we're really pushing that this year. One of my goals will be to have our recruiting plan where we can introduce it to our families here on campus, meet with the students every year with this freshman year, introduce them. Sophomore years, give them tours. Last year we gave middle school tours, thanks with the help of Mrs. Beasley, and that was really big. I think a lot of kids were even shocked that we have things like auto here. So that's good that we're opening their eyes at an early age and getting them here. The programs are currently wrapping up safety training, which is a requirement every year, so that's exciting to see that these students are learning firsthand of what they need to do to be safe on the job. And the last point that we want to point out here today is we went from no students in our school to work program last year, which is kind of like the old school co-op that people probably knew back in the day. This year we're up to 9 students that are working in industry every day, and that's very exciting to get out there and see the kids working with their hands. I went out last week and visited a few of them at their shops, and all of the industry members say they're doing really well. So we're really excited. We got students in construction, auto, business, veterinarian. So it's really exciting to see these students out in the industry and getting firsthand experience for half the day. So at this point, I guess do you have any questions for me in any of the fields? Because I could talk all day if you want.
You're a busy man, that's for sure.
Do you have time to breathe and relax at all?
We'll have to find time. I'm having my son Saturday, so we'll see if we can find time with that. So
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I just want to comment that I see a number of schools that are dropping sports because of lack of numbers. It's just really encouraging that during this time period that we're seeing numbers up. That says a lot for you and for the athletic department.
Right.
It's very good, because athletics are an important, integral part of high school and middle school. Thank you.
I have a question. Do you plan to bring the cross-country back here on a regular basis?
I think we want, after talking with Coach, I think we want to host one here. That'd be kind of like our senior night, make it a big, have like a herd show up and make it kind of a big deal and have them cheering as they cross the finish line. And then I think we do want to have one out at Redbud, just a little bigger invitational where we can invite, more competitive teams from the area to compete with our teams, because our teams are looking like they're going to be pretty strong for the years ahead.
Well, I didn't know what was going on that particular evening. I was down at the softball fields just with my kids, and it was, we got caught up in it. We were there, watching, and it was a really well done, remarkable event. And I guess I didn't realize that we hadn't been hosting them, but it was really exciting, and just the buzz around the school and the number of people that were there, in attendance was definitely laudable. So it would be great to see that
It was
continue.
nice to see the former state some of the state champions that were there, and when I was in school, some of them were helping and volunteering, and I thought that was really cool to see them, return and give their assistance to the whole meet. It was really cool.
Yeah, so well done.
Yes.
Those types of activities cannot exist without volunteers. I mean, especially in track and cross-country. Those just are impossible without
stations,
lots of
yeah.
volunteers, so compliments to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you,
You too.
All right, so we are at the part where we have executive team updates. I do want to thank you, Mr. Fry, for your work and your presentation, and just for the audience too, each month we do highlight either a school or a department, so they give updates about their department or their school. And so right now we have updates from our department leads. We're going to start with Mr. Phil Place, and then also then we'll go to Al Burgett, who's over our operations department. Carrie Brunstein, she's going to give a brief update about the financial department, business office. And then Mark Curlin, our assistant superintendent, who is going to give us an update on some data regarding our Mcep scores and NWEA. And then I'll have a quick update as well.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's weird to be out in front. In the back, pushing buttons. The first part of the school year is always the same for us. It's craziness. More than normal. And it's resetting passwords and getting kids accounts and whatever. This year, that was particularly an exciting time for us because we added 650 devices to our fleet so that we are now K1 through 12, 1-to-1. There's a lot of work to do to get that in place, but it's been pretty exciting. So there's a lot of that it was in last month's board packet, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. What came along with that was, well, where the heck do we put all these things? So now we've finished getting carts out and in every classroom. So that by itself is an impressive feat, but then you look at our buildings, and then it became an issue of, okay, now where do we plug these in? That was a big problem at Moccasin in particular, when the classrooms have like 2 outlets, and one of them is hooked to a light switch.
Right.
And I wish I was making that up. So we did get it all worked out. Everything's good. We're not blowing breakers anymore, and devices are being charged every night so that they are being used every day, which is very exciting. Let's see, that one's not important. Big thing that we made a change to is our single-day backup system that I just want to point out as a technology thing that's really exciting. We have a giant undo button now. We've had it for a while, but this one got improved. So if you do something accidentally, wipe something out completely, we can easily just go very quickly back to yesterday and get it for you. And that seems like it should be a simple thing, but the backup process in order to recover things is very time consuming. We can do it, and we can go back a day, 3, 4, 5 days, but it takes us several hours or even a day to do that. So this quick and easy access to, oops, and then I can go and restore that for you immediately is a really big deal. That is not an invitation to break things. So I just want to put that out there. Then the last thing I wanted to mention, which I think is a really big deal, is that we are collaborating with the Transportation Department in their easy routing software, which I feel bad because I haven't had a chance to talk to Nate about this yet. But we are implementing access to the tracking system for our, each of our buildings' front offices. So just to recap of what that is, we have the ability to monitor through GPS where the buses are located at any given time. And so the front lines are those building offices. Where's my kid? Where's the bus? Whatever the situation is, we feel like this would be a really great way to take some of the pressure off the transportation because they're not getting the phone calls first anyway. It's the front offices. And so we're piloting that right now. It's extremely easy to use. So as soon as we get the rest of the GPS information up to date, we're going to be offering that to all of our buildings so they have that information. So there's my very quick tour. Other than that, we're just fixing stuff and keeping things going. Next month, we'll be talking about the purchases for our the classroom technology upgrades that we're going to be doing across the elementary. So that's exciting stuff to come. Any questions for me? Anything I can explain for you? Nope. See, all right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Not a lot of big projects going on in the buildings, just continuous preventative maintenance, completion of work orders, keeping people happy. Warm on some days, cold on others, the way the temperature's changing right now. We did hire a mechanic, which has been great. I've been helping him organize and get the shop set up the way he wants, and he's been completing a lot of stuff on the buses and vans where we don't have to send them out anymore. Great asset to the school for sure. Some custodial stuff we're working on. I'm working on with Mark. Getting some like checklists going so when people have to sub for others, you know, they got a plan to follow. I also attended a MSBO conference up in Crystal Mountain, which was pretty awesome to meet a lot of people from other districts, bigger districts, even smaller districts. But it got me a pretty good network of people with more experience than me that I can contact if I need some information, because a lot of them have the same issues in a lot of their buildings as we do or anybody else. So I really enjoyed myself up there, and I hope to continue some classes. They sent me some information today that I can do some more classes online, and I'm going to do that. Any questions?
No, I would just like to add that networking is one of the most fantastic methods of learning the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, I was pretty happy to meet a lot of people up there.
And you have people you can contact all over the state, so.
Yeah, they're very
Awesome.
helpful, and, yep.
Great.
Al, are you able to keep the custodial department fully staffed?
What's that?
Are you having issues keeping the custodial department fully staffed, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. We're pretty short right now.
okay.
Some people are pulling a lot of extra hours to make up in other areas and, moving around, and we're working on it. So, about all we can do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So obviously, a lot of our time in the business office has been spent with the budget modifications and the audit reports, but we're very pleased with the outcome of both of those things. I want to add to a couple of things that Brian said and a couple of things that Cindy said. So Brian mentioned some of the changes. One of the additions in staffing is for us to do some wage increases that were supposed to happen on July 1st and were overlooked. So that is included, I think, in one of your recommended actions for tonight. In addition, the food service that is currently has a too high fund balance, we have increased the food service salaries for staffing so that we can better retain and recruit food service staff and to be more aligned to the countywide numbers so that we can keep our food service well-staffed. And in addition, that will help us with our spend down plan, which Becky and I have already started. So a couple other things in the business office. We did get the MyCan grant, which is for the a senior advisor, so somebody who's a recent college graduate who can come in and assist our seniors with their after graduation plans, and we're still looking to fill that position. So we're looking for someone local who's a recent graduate, either from here or from another area. So if you know of anybody, please send them our way. We'd love to have some people apply for that. I've been working closely with the transportation department in the transition of staffing, and that is going very well. However, we're still looking and working, and we'll have some updates for you in a couple of weeks. The federal grants, I reported to you last month that we were waiting for Nexus to open for us to submit our federal grants. Nexus is not going to be opened. They have scratched that for this year, and they're moving back to the old system. So it is what it is. It's the state. So what we'll do is we'll be submitting those grants as soon as the system is open for us. But what we've done is every month I send basically a report to the state and say, these are the things I need you to approve before we spend them next month. And so they've been kind of prior approving. So every month I've been sending information to the state about how we're spending our federal funds, and everything's been approved so far. So we're very pleased about that. We had a FICA federal refund that came in that Laura gave to all current staff, and that's been taken care of. And then we also have staff that have left that we owe money to. So we're doing a little bit of research and trying to locate staff and make sure either their banking account is still their information is still the same, or their mailing address and things like that. So we hope to get that completed by the end of December, by the end of the calendar year. I just want to take a minute to thank all of the other leads and all of the administration. They've been so patient with me and Brian as we're learning the ropes and the systems and stuff, and just everybody's been wonderful and very collaborative. So I've very much enjoyed working with those that I've worked with. And then the only other thing I want to add that Cindy mentioned was we have fixed already the daycare revenue that she's reported. So that's already been fixed with Mike, and they've just taken care of it. So you don't have to worry about that. That's all been fixed. And then our food service, just a quick update too, we are struggling with supply chain and getting the things that we need. So the menu is changing a lot. So if you hear about that, that's why we're struggling with things like even bowls. We can't get bowls. So Becky's working very diligently on getting the food that she needs for the district. And that is all I have. What questions do you have? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, can you turn off that screen so it'll show my presenting? There we go, thank you. All right, good evening. I'm going to speak a little bit on the Mcep scores and PSAT scores and SAT scores from last year. And I'm first of all just going to kind of reference So slide 3 in your presentation talks about Mcep scores reading grades 3 to 5. Buchanan ranks 5th in the county in grades 3 through 5, and you can see the scores there. On the left of the screen is number 1 in the county. The green is where Buchanan's highlighted. So you can see we ranked 5th and 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade reading. The blue color, if you see a blue on the screen, that's an improvement over the 18-19 scores. So you can see that Buchanan in 3rd and 4th grade improved in 2 areas. In 3rd and 4th grade, in 5th grade, there was a slight drop from the 18-19 score. All right, 6th and 7th grade reading. 6th grade, we were 6th in the county, and then I think the 7th grade can toot their horn because the Mcep scores for 7th grade were number 1 in the county at 65.2%. So
Yeah, yay.
again, I think anywhere in the top half is great for us. And so, but you know, to say you're number 1 in the county, competing against bigger schools, that just makes you feel good. So again, congratulations to the middle school and their staff. So again, 1st in the county. Looking at cohort groups, which is a lot of times the state, when they compare scores, they will compare like the last Mcep scores for 6th grade to a new group of Mcep scores in the same grade. And when you're talking about that from a school standpoint, that's okay, but administrators always look at kind of like a cohort group. So like, what did that group do the last time they took the test? And what are they doing the next time after they take the test to see if we're showing growth and we're doing better? So that little chart at the bottom shows that in 18-19, the 3rd grade group was at 50.4 proficient, and that same group when they were in 5th grade were at 52.8. So with COVID going on and not taking it in 19-20, we still had an increase in the number of kids proficient. We did have a drop from 4th to 6th grade. But if you look back at the 5th grade group in 18-19, they were at 55.5 proficient number of students percent, but then in 7th grade they're at 65.2, so a 10% increase by the time they left their middle school year. So great job. I think 2 out of 3 years for reading shows an increase. Looking at math, math is a little bit different, some good and some bad, honestly. If you look at this, and if you were to go across the county and look at math scores in Mcep, you would notice that there's a decline in most of the areas. But looking at slide 6, Buchanan ranks 4th to 5th in the county in math. So again, in the top 5. 2nd grade 2 grades dropped from 18-19 to the 2021 school year. Again, if you see blue, that's an increase. So honestly, the 3rd grade dropped a little bit. When you compare the 18-19 group to the 2021, 1% maybe. But the 4th grade groups, if you compared those, there was like a 12% increase. The 5th grade group had a little bit of a drop, about 10 points from one group to the next. Again, you're comparing apples to oranges, but just to kind of give you an idea, in 3rd through 5th grade. Looking at 6th and 7th grade, in 6th grade, we were in 6th and 7th grade, we were ranked between 5th and 7th in the county. 7th grade increased from their 5th grade to their 7th grade cohort. So, and that's been kind of a history of the middle school. When they come into the middle school, they're a little bit lower. By the time they exit the middle school, there's been an increase usually. So that 5th grade group in 18-19 was at 36% proficient. In 7th grade, when they left, they were at 46.7. So about a 10% increase. I'm going to stop there with respect to the Mcep. Any questions on the Mcep for math and reading? All right. Let's move into social studies. Slides 9 and 10 talk about social studies. Slide 9 is the 5th grade scores. You'll see that in 5th grade, we were 5th in the county at 23% proficient. That was above the state average, above the ISD average, so that's always nice to know. And you can see the schools that were above us. So again, 5th grade. 11th grade social studies, we were 4th in the county. And so again, above the state average and above the ISD average with the amount of students proficient. Again, a great sign. Any questions with social studies?
How do those compare on a year-over-year, like we saw with the other scores?
I would say with social studies, it kind of is, that's probably a little bit higher in social studies than what it normally is. Now, 5th grade, science, was a new test this year, so you will see the scores across the county are probably lower than what they've been in the past. Fifth grade science, we were fifth in the county at 33%, again, above the ISD and state average. Eighth grade science, we were 10th in the county at 17%, so we were below the county and the ISD average. And 11th grade science, we were 8th in the county. So we've got some work to do in science. But overall, across the state and in the ISD, science scores were low. And that's, again, that's a new test.
Is there any conversation about them exploring the actual test when your entire county, when the top school in the county is 26%?
That would be an argument you would hear from everybody in the county and the state when they first come out with a new test. So yes, that argument comes up, and the state has other ideas, but yes. PSAT scores. So the high school looks a lot at SAT, and so the PSAT is kind of lead into that, and so they've been testing year after year, starting out with 8th grade. And so if you see the 8th grade PSAT for ERW, which is like the English or reading and writing portion of the assessment, 6th in the county, above the state average and ISD average. The 9th grade, 7th in the county, again above the ISD average. And then the PSAT for 10th graders, 6th in the county, above the ISD average. And the one that they like to look a lot at is the reading and writing on the SAT. And so 4th in the county, 56%, above the ISD average, just slightly below the state average. So 4th in the county, that's great for us. I think you can toot your horn as the high school for the reading writing portion. When you move into math, PSAT, 6th in the county at 36%, real close to right on the state and just below the ISD average. And again, as you look at each one of these charts, you can see the schools that are above us the majority of the time and the ones that are below us. PSAT 9 is 6th in the county, just above the ISD average. The PSAT 10 is 7th in the county at 29% in math. Below the ISD average. And then the SAT benchmark math, 5th in the county at 27%, and just below the ISD and a little bit below the state average. But again, you can see Bridgman, St. Joe, Lakeshore, and New Buffalo above Buchanan, but then we're right there. So I think a lot for the community and for the district to be proud of. And to kind of toot our horn as what we're doing and things like that. It's been a lot of work at the elementary level in the last year and a half, 2 years with NWA scores and doing some specific things with respect to goals and things like that. And we're kind of moving that into the high school at the 8th grade. And then high school is always looking at their SAT scores and the PSAT scores, and we're getting them to look at different things with respect to Mcep. Some reports that I gave out to them after the spring came in as to areas and how we did in the Mcep and some areas they could look at each level and things like that for their teachers to look at. We sent those out to the principals recently. And like I said, overall, if you're looking at math, whether it's Mcep or SAT, PSAT, that's an issue in the county and the state. And actually the new curriculum director at the ISD, in meeting with her, Trish and I met with her, and then the curriculum directors met with her. She's looking at making that an emphasis in the county in the next upcoming years. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am just trying to share my screen. Hold on a second. Okay, good evening again, community and board, and thank you guys for your time. I want to thank my wonderful team for their presentations tonight, all of the hard work that they've done to get prepared for tonight as well. Our students who continue to forge forward despite the challenges that they face each and every day, especially when it comes to testing. It is not an easy feat to do those assessments during this time. And also Dr. Carlin, he did a test prep last year for us at the high school, so some of that could be attributed to that once we extrapolate some of the data. Dr. Dunn, who has been marvelous at his building, and Mrs. Beasley as well. They have really been leading the charge with their staff in PLCs and honing in on the data and helping our students. So tonight, I just have a couple of updates. I always want to kind of go back to our vision, which is to develop responsible, resilient, creative citizens capable of succeeding in a global society, as well as our mission, which is educating students for lifelong success in their civic, academic, physical, and social and emotional lives. So, which is what we're doing. We saw that in the data. So I just want to address just a little bit about the Return to Learn plan. We shared the Return to Learn plan back in August, and we've updated it quite regularly as changes happen within the mitigation strategies, within COVID, everything with our guidance from MDHHS, with our guidance from Berrien County Health Department. So this is a very fluid document that cannot be concrete at all. We've seen from the start of the school year the changes that we had where we started, it was changed, and it was changed back again. So we are up and down with this, and so as things happen, as we're given more guidance, we are moving along with the guidance that we're given. This new plan, it's not even new, this updated plan provides just consistent language throughout. It allows flexibility to our schools and our district and our leaders. And this is a guide. I want to restate that. It is a guide. It is not the law, and it's not a requirement to have. As a matter of fact, this document sits in our drive. It does not go to the state or anywhere. So we're using this as a guide, and we'll update as needed. I don't know if this will go. So I want to just show you briefly what this plan, and it's the same plan. There was an area in the plan that under office visitors, we had a word in there that the office will or shall, right here. So it says district, and I'm looking on the far left side, it says district and building offices will remain open. School district may prioritize visits to minimize office visitor traffic. So before it said that we will, and now that it says may. So just wanted to share with everybody that we're making this more consistent so that we have flexibility throughout the plan. Nothing is set in stone. We're looking at our different buildings specifically to make decisions based off of that when we need to make those decisions. Okay, let's see. Go back to sharing my screen so I can get to this. And within this, I have shared that our district will utilize our own data to make those decisions as we move forward. There are so many variables that we have to take into consideration before we move to another level of mitigation strategies or anything like that. This is the data that we've collected over the couple of weeks since we have been in school. So this data that says current data, we've had of our positive cases for the first week of school, we had one positive case at the high school. We had another case at the middle school. And then we also had 3 cases here the second week of school. We had 3 cases at the high school and then a case at Moccasin. So as you can see this data, the highest number of cases that we had any week at our school has been 4. And then after that, we put in practice our guidance plans, our quarantines plans, whatever we were required to do at that time. And right now, this week, so today was Monday, we did not have any cases reported to us. We do not have any active cases in our district. Last week, I believe, right now it says we had one case within our district. The number of students quarantined, which I did put out a letter, and my stressor was the number of students quarantined. So we know that with each case, it varies by case, the number of kids that would have to be quarantined or put out of school because of their exposure to a positive case. So in October, we had a case at the middle school that put out 29 kids. We also had a case at Moccasin which put out 23 kids. And so as of right now, all kids are back in school, and we do not have any active cases. So one of the things that we have to do when we're making decisions about the next steps is, what are we using as a baseline? I want to reiterate, this is a guide. It is nothing that is set in stone, and will be nothing, and it may not even last tonight. Who knows? There might be a change that comes up tonight, because we know that there has been even a transition, or there's going to be some transitions at the Berrien County Health Department. So we don't know. And I appreciate the families and the board, community, teachers, and staff for being patient, because as we put out information one day, 2 days later, it changes. And so we are also being fluid with this. So one of the things I want to talk about is that when we think about what next mitigation step would be, it'll be based on our school numbers. Just showed you the data, and then our data is collected daily as well. I get input from our leadership team, and then it's based on data from last year. What I'm deciding is based on data from last year and our current data. And then the next mitigation step, which could be a universal masking at a particular building or within a district. So looking at our data as a guide, our positive cases per building could be, for our high school, 5 active cases in a 2-week period, could move our students to a universal masking at that particular building. Middle school, 3, elementary, 3. And then as a guide, our students will remain in masks for about a 2-week period. And then if there are additional cases that happen, we'll add on an additional week until the cases have all been cleared out. And I'm stressing again, there are variables with each case, because if there are 3 cases in a household and the students have not been in school, we would have to take that in consideration and not make a universal masking decision for the entire school. So nothing is concrete, nothing is easy to make, because there are so many layers that are put in place when making the decision. Right now, we are at mask as an option, and we continue to remain that way until our data shows us otherwise. And that has been communicated to our leadership team, and it's been communicated to everyone as I've spoken about universal masking. Any questions regarding the return to learn plan? All right. Just a couple of other things I wanted to bring up, that we do have a vaccination clinic coming up on October 26th. This is in conjunction with our city. We have the flu vaccine there, we'll have booster shots, and then we'll also have the COVID-19 vaccine. And then also, this coming Thursday will be my first superintendent and conversation with our parents. This will be held here from 4:45 until 5:15. Really, it's an informal way of us having a conversation, you asking me questions, and if I have all the information, I'll be able to respond to you. If not, I'll definitely get it or try to find it on that night. So there will not be a formal presentation, but really just conversations. And then lastly, that's not last, but I'd also like to thank these 3 ladies for creating a wonderful homecoming week. Jessica Elliott, Lisa Hollock, Rachel Carlson. They worked with the middle school and the junior herd to create some really cool events. All the principals got on board, had Spirit Week as well. It was an amazing time for our community and for our students here. So thank you to them. And then also, we cannot forget Hannah Roberts, who showed up and was very humble, real pleasant young lady. So I appreciate that. And then just a reminder, this month is National Principals Month. I want to say thank you to all of our building leaders for what they do. They are leading the charge every day. And as they are leading, they engage in instructional focused interactions with teachers. They build a productive climate. They facilitate collaboration and professional learning communities, and they manage personnel and resources strategically. We know that we could not do this work without their leadership, and so I really thank them for all that they do each and every day in leading their buildings and helping our district. Questions, comments? Okay.
Thank you.
That leads us into superintendent and department reports.
Okay. Yes, so all of our building leaders on a month-to-month basis, they share their building updates, and then I have the executive team to come and share with you in person the updates. So that's about it. I don't know if anyone had any questions regarding those or comments regarding the reports for this month.
Very good, informative. Absolutely.
That's it.
Oh,
Sorry. Oh, okay.
I forgot.
All right.
I was
All
ready
right,
and then I was
so,
like, wait.
yes, Buck staff appreciation, so I'm sorry about that. So we do have our winner. Kelly is going to read off the nominees as well as our winner. I want to thank everybody, the community this month. Really put in a lot of nominees, and to read everyone's description and what people really have done for them means a lot. So we hope that our community, our parents, and our students, there were a lot of students who also put in nominations as well, that we continue to do that and show appreciation for our staff, our teachers, as you know, they are out in front and they are doing really good work, putting in extra hours and helping and support. So go ahead.
So we always read off the list, and this month is very long, so which is awesome. So we want to do, let's see, Amanda Horton, Buchanan Community Schools Food Service, Becky Kaltenbach, Buchanan Community School Food Service Supervisor, BJ Scott, Ottawa Lunch Aide, Cindy Hess, Buchanan High School Teacher, Cindy Stacy, Ottawa First Grade Teacher, Dawn Van Dyke, Ottawa Special Education Teacher, Donna Southwell, Buchanan High School Interventionist, Jamie Warmbein, Buchanan High School Teacher, Jane Phillips, Buchanan Community Schools Bus Driver, Joe Kemp, Buchanan Community Schools Computer Technician, Kathy Loma, Moccasin Administrative Assistant, Chris Reddig, Moccasin Third Grade Teacher, Larry Klein, Buchanan Community School Operations Utility Staff, Margaret Cowles, Buchanan Community School Food Service, Marion Hurd, Ottawa Administrative Assistant, Melissa Frost, Buchanan High School Teacher, Melissa Sudden, Ottawa Kindergarten Teacher, Melissa Sweeney, Buchanan Community Schools Food Service, Dr. Michael Dunn, Moccasin Principal, Michelle Munyon, Buchanan Community Schools Administrative Assistant, Patricia Robinson, Buchanan Community School Superintendent, Russ Phillip, Buchanan Community Schools Teacher, Ryan Franzak, Buchanan Middle School Dean of Students, and Stacy Lee, Buchanan Middle School Special Education Teacher. And the winner, Miss Abby Cantu, which is the Buchanan High School Administrative Assistant, and the application was, she is always there for my children and checks up on them if they happen to miss school, Buchanan Community School parent. So on behalf of the Board of Education and Administrative of Buchanan Community Schools, we thank you for your service and encourage you to keep up the great level of achievement and service to our district. No, she's not here. I think they already.
There's a nice certificate for her, as well as this nice $50 Buck staff appreciation. So we'll pass this on, and that we'll give that to her. I'll pass it down.
There you go. Thank you.
It's nice to see so many names
many.
on this list, and seeing similar names month to month.
Yes.
I'm sure all of us could agree that Michelle could be on, we could all nominate Michelle, for example, every
Yes.
month. But you know, I don't know, it's just I think it speaks well of our district that, you know, people take the time to do it. Having done one, it's not an easy process. It's not like
No.
you just put the name in. You know, it takes a good 20 minutes and some thought behind somebody to actually fill out the report. So, you know, for that many people to do it, especially this month, I think it's speaks volumes.
All right, moving on to item G, information reports and new business. And just some summaries from our committees, Human Resource Committee.
I can speak to that one briefly. We met October 6th. We reviewed open positions, some of the recruiting challenges, as well as recruiting ideas. So when Al mentioned that there are staffing challenges in the custodial services, that's one of the things we discussed, how we're addressing those, ideas on recruiting, as well as retention of staff and employees currently in place, and then also ways to recognize, of course, towards retention. It was not a long meeting, which was kind of nice.
Very good. Finance Committee.
I can cover that. I mean, I think it was well covered tonight already, but
Been busy.
Brian Brown, Ruth Ryder, Chris Carlson, Mrs. Robinson, and myself, and Carrie Brunstig, and Mark Curlin, too, met on October 11th just to cover the amended budget and some other items that were well covered tonight.
Can you go into detail on that?
Very good. Curriculum and Programming Committee.
I'll take that. So we met on the 12th. We met from 12 o'clock until 1:30, almost 2 o'clock, so a couple of hours. The board members present were Scott Carlin and myself, and district members were Trish Robinson and Mark Curlin. We also had guests that evening or that afternoon as well. The first topic and our first guest was Wendy Murphy, and she spoke about the science of reading and the foundations of reading, and she presented it like a teacher that I understood everything she was saying about the changes in reading. And what goes around comes around. Basically, what she was discussing was what I learned, phonics and the emphasis on phonics and so on. The second discussion was the ICE expectations, and Stacy DeMeo, principal at the high school, explained that in depth. We spent most of our time talking about class sizes and the balance and equity between the various buildings, and that we recognize that some new programs have to have lower numbers until those get started, and so that's something that we will be monitoring. We also discussed what do class numbers mean at the elementary versus the high school, and everything in between. We also discussed PLCs and what that means for individual teachers and so on. There were some classes that were on the possibility list that were not offered this year, but we have many AP classes that are, and we're really excited about those AP classes. We have calculus, psychology, statistics, and so we're really excited that we brought AP courses back to Buchanan. It's always a rich conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next item, which is a discussion for Pledge of Allegiance. And just some background, this was brought up that, of course, I've been on the Board of Education for over, I forgot how many, 20-something years. And of course, during that time period, we've never done the Pledge of Allegiance, but it was brought up as to how come not. In things, it's not in board policy, however, it is a discussion that we can have as far as should we not. I think Ruth has done some homework. If you can share a little bit of what you found.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I taught social studies from 1968 until 2010 at the public school high schools, And then I taught at Western Michigan University for several fall semesters. So history's my thing, so I did some research. And I had always known that the Pledge of Allegiance was written by a gentleman from Western New York. And I never knew it started as an ad campaign to sell flags. Who knew? But it was fascinating to do the research. It's 130 years old now, and it was designed to coincide with Columbus Day in 1892. So 400 years after Columbus discovered America as by the Europeans. That's why they did this. The man who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance was a minister. He was very closely associated with a cousin who was a socialist utopian. Who knew? And he was also very involved with Frances Willard, who was one of the leading educators at that time, who was a leading women's rights advocate, and who also was the national chair of the WCTU, Women's Christian Temperance Union. So when the pledge was first written, it said, he wrote, "I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." About 20-some years later, in 1923, they decided that instead of my flag, it should be the flag, because at that time there were many immigrants coming from Eastern and Southern Europe, and they were really fearful that when people stood up and said the pledge, that they were pledging their original flag. So then they decided, well, we better put in the flag. Next change was putting the next change was when they decided not to have the Bellamy. He was the author, and you were supposed to stand with your right hand extended toward the flag. In 1942, that smacked a little bit too much of something that was going on in Europe, and so then they decided that it should be your hand over your heart. And 54, that's when President Eisenhower put the words, and the Congress put the words "under God" in, because of the communist threat that was looming. There have been a number of Supreme Court cases, state court cases that have gone nowhere. And in 2012, the state of Michigan passed a law that states that K-12 students must recite the Pledge of Allegiance daily. This has been and is currently the case in all of our schools, so every student says the pledge every day. And as Dr. Burnett said, our institutional history, it's never been part of our board meetings, but it's not something that any of us are opposed to probably, but it's just never been done. And it was never brought to our attention in the past. So I have a longer history. If anyone would like to read my homework, I have some copies, or just contact me. I found it an interesting concept of how it evolved and how it changed. So that's where we are.
Other board members, thoughts?
I'm all for adding it to our agenda and for every meeting. I think it not only reminds us where we have been as a country, but where I think we want to go as a country when we do say the pledge.
I think we also support it for all of our students and our schools, and our local American Legion provided flags for all of our rooms, and that was a couple years ago. So we just want to, I think, continue that as leaders of our school district too.
Is there always a flag in the auditorium, or?
Not really.
We never did, but it's here now.
It's here
so-
now.
But it's here now.
It never was.
So,
I-
there wasn't.
I taught in the auditorium for 15 years, and I don't remember a flag being here.
We got one now.
Yes, we do, yeah.
Well, we'll have to make.
Right, but not
If we
in
do
this-
adopt it, we need to make sure there's a flag.
Absolutely, and there are flags in every
Or
classroom.
you just face somewhere.
Yeah.
We do.
Other thoughts?
We face somewhere.
Scott?
I'm fine either way, to be honest. I think, especially hearing some of the history, it seems, and again, this maybe is a broader discussion, it seems somewhat arbitrary that that's what we've ultimately chosen to have our students do every day versus why don't we play the national anthem? For example, why don't we play the national, why isn't the question, if we want to do something patriotic, why is that what we're hitting on? Is it because it's shorter? You know, we don't stand up and say the pledge before the basketball games, we'll listen to the national anthem. So, again, this is maybe just more of a philosophical question. I have no problems talking about it or having a vote on it or deciding to do it even. I do wonder sometimes about our kids, and most of us probably grew up saying the national anthem, or saying the national anthem, there I go, saying the pledge every day, and because we were asked to do it every day, did we really think about what we were saying, or was it just a rote thing we did before school? And if we asked our students the same thing, how many of them are actually considering what they're saying? So those are more philosophical thoughts than anything. If, you know, as a group we decide to do it, I'm more than happy to do so. It's just when this conversation came up, those are the things I thought about. I do understand the other side. I do understand why there may be, for anybody that supports saying the pledge, I completely understand that. I also understand that there are groups of people that are in our country that may not have the same sort of opinion on every word that might show up in the pledge, whether it's religious-based or, you know, I don't know. I'll just stop with there. I do understand both sides, I guess, so.
I might add that, now this was not binding on Michigan because it was Massachusetts Supreme Court, but they ruled that because reciting the Pledge of Allegiance is patriotic rather than religious exercise, saying the words "under God" does not discriminate against atheists. But there are those who obviously believe in God who do not want to pledge allegiance to our flag. So I understand what you're saying, but again, that's not binding on Michigan. I just found it interesting that Massachusetts came up with that decision. So I'm not sure how this works.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't know if Katie wanted to share her ideas or anything.
I don't have a different opinion. The thing that was interesting to me, and I apologize for no response, I wasn't copied on the first email, so I think I was missed on the first email that came through from someone asking about this. Interesting timing, and I guess I'm just curious of what prompts this right now, but I can support either way.
Yeah, I had that question as well, but again, I'm fine with supporting it as well.
Yeah. So what the process is going to be, the part of it is we're doing a discussion, and then what we'll do is we'll bring it back to the next board meeting as a formal vote, since it's not
Motion.
policy, so it'll come as a motion, and then we will vote at that time. And then once it's voted, then it'll be put into action depending on what, or can't say if it's going to be put into action, it's going to depend on the vote, but whatever it is will happen after that point.
Do we know when the board did it last regularly?
No clue.
Do you have any history
We didn't
on that?
find,
I
she
will
couldn't
say,
find anything.
I will say that I've been part of education for over 50 years. My husband was, combined, we've got a century going, and we don't ever remember having a pledge before a board meeting. So, and I did some research, some counties some county schools require it, others do not, some states do, others do not.
Some boards do,
Some
some don't.
boards do, some don't, so it's a it's a full gamut of different opinions and different rules. It's not codified in our state law, except for our students to say it on a daily basis. So,
Okay. Good discussion. All right. Moving on, community dialogue, citizen concerns. And I would go through my list. Just a reminder for those who are coming up, you have about 3 minutes, and it must be respectful. Unfortunately, even though it's not on the card, but in our policy, in order to participate, you do have to be a member of our district in order to speak. So just to let you know that ahead of time, because that's not on the card, but it is in our policy. So I'm going to,
Can't hear you.
okay. Well,
We can follow our policy.
all right, so our board policy basically states if you're coming up, you got 3 minutes, and then for those who are coming up, make sure that you be respectful. Also, in our policy, it does state that you do have to be a member of the district, and so we're going to follow that.
Harvey, I would, excuse me, Harvey, I would suggest that we allow anyone who wants to speak this evening.
Okay. We will see. All right.
I might add, if this is according to your definition, and we will check that, of what constitutes open meetings, then we'll have to change our board policy.
Right.
Thank you.
Because it is in the policy. All right. Brenda Lewis?
On this here, it says, be residents, employees of the district, anyone representing a group in the district, or any representative of a firm eligible to bid on materials or services solicited by the board. So this doesn't say that you have to be in the district. But if you could be representing somebody from the district.
Right. Well, we're going to move on. Brenda?
Before I read this, I actually can't read it without saying I am really impressed with our school over the last 3 years. I really enjoyed watching the changes, okay? My name is Brenda Lee Lewis. I have 4 children, 3 of whom have already graduated from Buchanan High School, and my youngest is a sophomore. I have a personal training studio here in town and have been self-employed in this town for 9 years. What I do for a living is teach people how to increase the quality of their life by teaching them about their body and how it works. I spend much of my time retraining adults out of bad postures and into new productive postures. I focus on human movement. I am here to share my opinion about our freedom of choice as my own person and as a mother of a child still in this school and for all the children who have no one to stand for them. I refuse to train my clients in masks for several reasons, but the 2 most important are, I am a body reader, and if I cannot see their face or hear their breathing, then half of my work is inhibited. Number 2, approximately 8 out of every 10 people I meet are shallow breathers. This is just one of the major causes of a decrease in quality in life and an increase in illness. Therefore, the breath is probably one of my most pushed requirements when working with me. Most children are shallow breathers and they don't even know it. They often have parents that don't know that. Putting a mask on a child while at school in the sitting position hunched over a desk or a piece of technology to me is like a death sentence. It is a known fact, depression and hunched over positions go hand in hand. It is also a known fact that standing or sitting upright with a strong core that lets the breath flow properly and as well as the blood flow through the chest cavity goes hand in hand with a more confident and clear-minded person. What disgusts me the most is that I've had to take up spending a large amount of time researching many subjects myself because it's become obvious that we can't trust our leaders, time that I could be spending helping more people have a better quality of life. I am blessed to have the luxury of my son's father in his life, which affords me this extra research time. When my girls were growing up, I did not have that luxury, so I do believe it's my time to speak up. My big question is, as school board members, did you accept and promise to comply with the fully 68 pages of these rules because you do agree with the rules, or did you accept and promise to fully comply because of the large sum of money the school could use? I do believe you have the right to your opinion. That is the great thing about the United States Constitution. But if you chose to put the money ahead of our children's true health, then I am ashamed. I believe and respect the choice of each establishment, whether to mask or not, but I believe it is the parent's choice to decide what our school does. It is my belief that we are past the point of needing such dramatic pressure on our children. These kids spend a majority of their day in the school, which, in my opinion, should be readying them with education to go out into the world and become productive citizens, and letting the parents and children together decide what their medical choices should be. I do believe masks are harmful to our children when used day in and day out. We have done our part in slowing the spread, and now it's time to accept that we need to work on becoming the most healthy version we can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla Johnson. Carla Johnson. Carla? Yeah.
I'm short. I'm Carla Jackson Johnson. I grew up in my great-grandparents' house at 419 West Front in the era of the first experimental penicillin and sulfa antibiotics. Great-grandmother's UV light dried up our colds and accelerated wound healing. Scientists were experimenting with light therapy until the wide availability of pharmaceutical products. It was just easier to pop a pill or get a shot. But I have always believed in and practiced light therapy. When I built my own house in Buchanan 16 years ago, the builder installed the furnace with a UV light. My indoor pool purifies the water with UV light, and I own a very serious far infrared light. Since then, scientists discovered the miracle drugs can be overused and have returned to research with light. In spring 2020, at the beginning of the SARS-CoV-2 epidemic, research with UV light and ventilation interventions once again came to public attention, but still cannot compete with the much more costly and heavily advertised antibiotics, antivirals, and mandated vaccines. Has the school system looked into other methods of controlling colds, flu, and so-called COVID, then masking and distancing children and keeping them home from school? And all this based on cases diagnosed by the wildly inaccurate PCR test the FDA has recalled effective December 31st. COVID funds could easily cover ventilation interventions. The CDC lists tools to improve ventilation at cdc.gov. I won't read them all, but it's as simple as opening outdoor air dampers, windows and doors, increase air filtration, and above all, use UV germicidal irradiation. The airlines are doing this extensively now and with great results. These methods reduce the spread of airborne particulates and vary in cost from no cost to $2,500. Instead of muzzling our children and reducing their oxygen levels, you could be enhancing their health and their ability to learn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Don Ryman. Don Ryman, will you be able to, give him the mic.
I'm Don Ryman from 313 West Front Street, Buchanan. John Stubblefield and I risked our lives for this great country in the U.S. Navy. He for 6 years, I for 4 years. My great-great-great-grandfather, Joseph Hoddle, risked his life in the Army and the American Revolution to guarantee the rights we have in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. In recognition of the American flag, which symbolizes our great government and our rights of each and every citizen of one vote, and the civil rights embodied in the Constitution, join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. When I appeared at the last Buchanan School Board meeting, I advised you of the great physical and psychological injury to the children from wearing masks, particularly from wearing them for the whole school day. Particularly in the case of younger children who will continually touch the mask, it becomes a snot rag filled with germs. We had snot rags. They began the day as handkerchiefs when I was growing up, but they have since been replaced with Kleenex and its competitive products. The school will be liable in dollar damages to these children for the physical and psychological damage they have incurred, which may last a lifetime. Since the children are minors, the statute of limitation for these damages will not begin to run until they have become of age many years in the future. As a taxpayer, I don't want to have to pay these damages for the mandated masks, which in any event do not protect the children or anyone else from COVID. In no way can you justify torturing these children with these mandated masks.
Thank you, Don. John Stubblefield.
Thank you.
First thing I need to do is get a higher chair. Mr. Burnett, I want to thank you for the email exchange that you and I have had over the past several weeks. And I want to thank the board for the consideration that I have raised about the Pledge of Allegiance. Somebody asked during the discussion what was the timing? Well, the timing was just real simple. I attended the school board meeting last month, and the pledge wasn't recited. With a strong military background, I found it strange, and that's why I started the email conversation. I want to thank the board for the conversation that we had here today. The history lesson was wonderful and took my whole speech away. Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I thank you for that. I do want to leave you with, and I thank the board for considering to take this up at your next meeting and coming up with a final resolution. I want to leave you with this thought, though. Standing and reciting the pledge with hand over heart is more than words that get lost over time. It's an action that symbolizes one's loyalty to the United States of America and a feeling that as an American, one is proud to be part of this blessed country. It brings me great pride to stand tall and recite the pledge whenever and wherever I'm asked to do so. So again, I thank you very much for taking this up, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. All right. All right, Stephanie Fain.
Hi, guys.
I'm a nervous speaker, so I apologize if I fumble a little bit. So I live here in Buchanan. My name's Stephanie Fain. I live at 217 East Front Street in Buchanan, like a small little apartment. It's just me and my 6-year-old. And the last time that I was here, I noticed, I think it was Kelly, who said that you were having a great first year, and your kid was 6 years old. Yep. It was their first year in school. My kid is having a terrible year. It's awful. The fear is crazy. It's very uncomfortable. What is uncomfortable, I think, about it is that we live in like the nicest place in America, and I feel like I should be able to trust my school board with my child's health. And it kind of saddens me that like I don't have a degree in anything spectacular, you know, but I've been able to do the research on my own that says that all of this stuff is really harmful, not just to my kid, but to everybody's child and our entire next generation. And if we're doing things here in Buchanan and we claim that we're for our next generation, we're doing things like the promise for our children, then why aren't we worried about their health? Because a sick generation can't do anything. They're not going to last, and the only thing they're going to do is propagate more sick, unhealthy generations that are not going to be able to withstand anything. And I see these masks, and my child is so scared to be around anybody now. Like, he's scared to go to the doctor or anything like that. That is not normal for a 6-year-old. And that's what the society is doing. It's propagating this fear that if he doesn't use it, that he's gonna die. And that's not true. In fact, the very opposite is true. Like when he's breathing in these contaminants that his body is trying to expel over and over again for 8 hours a day, you don't know what that is doing to him. Like, you don't know that. But we do know that it increases anxiety and depression and all these other things, and I think you should be leaving that into the parents' hands. Like that. Another thing is, I think pushing vaccines is incredibly irresponsible. In the same line, that it's awful. These things are not tested. You don't know what they're gonna do, and who's gonna be liable for the long-term repercussions of these vaccines and these masks? It's the parents. It is not the school. And that's all I have to say, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think it's Matt Belcher. Can't see that.
Thank you. Matt Belcher from Stevensville. We have been lied to. When the virus first appeared, we were told it was a bat from the Wuhan market. We found out that bats were not sold at the market. Then we found out bats didn't live in the territory. Then we found out about the Wuhan coronavirus lab. The WHO changed the definition of a pandemic. It doesn't require any deaths. In March of 2020, the CDC changed the policy for death certificates. You could die of something else and still be counted as a COVID death. In April, they changed the definition of a case. Those without COVID could be counted as a case. For months, the CDC touted the vaccine stopped infection and transmission, with some breakthrough cases. In August, the CDC director said vaccines don't stop transmission and don't stop infection. Then they stopped reporting and counting breakthrough cases. They changed the definition of a vaccine. The CDC changed the requirement for hospitals and clinics in counting COVID cases. If a person is vaccinated, they don't have to register that person as a case, even if they have COVID, and the hospital with COVID or died of COVID. The only numbers registered of the vaccinated come from volunteer submissions. The CDC changed the policy this year that anyone who dies within 2 weeks of getting the vaccine from the vaccine itself is to be counted not as a vaccine death, not as a COVID death, not as a vaccinated COVID death, but as an unvaccinated COVID death and widely reported as such. In 2008, Fauci co-authored a paper that said most pandemic deaths from 1819 Spanish flu were from bacterial pneumonia from people wearing masks. In 2014, Fauci praised hydroxychloroquine as a miracle wonder drug for coronavirus. Once the word got out that this was helping people recover, this time it was banned. Even today, doctors cannot order it online. They must call it in the old-fashioned way, and most refuse to do so. This past June, through a Freedom of Information Act request, 3,200 emails were released that stated the virus is a bioweapon created in the Wuhan lab. Fauci said masks are ineffective and hydroxychloroquine is the cure. I could go on, but again, the point is we have been lied to. In the words of William Wilberforce, when finishing his speech to the British Parliament in opposing the slave trade, he said, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know." Solzhenitsyn said, "The simple step of a courageous individual is to not take part in the lie." Be that courageous individual. Thank you.
Deborah Stevens.
Thank you.
One nation under God. Dear Lord, I pray for the board. I pray for all of you to have wisdom. I pray for Harvey Burnett, PhD in psychology, to recognize that masking hurts the children he's here to defend. Masking dehumanizes all of us. Masking spreads germs. I'm in charge of the mask injury report for Berrien County. If any of you parents, if you are parents, would have read any of these statements, they would have left you in tears, disgusted and abhorred that the parents can send their kids to school in these masks. I said, what's it gonna take? Cut off a finger every week? Go to school, Johnny. But Mommy, I can't breathe, I have a cold. Go to school, Johnny, you have to put your mask on, Johnny. First grader vomited in her mask early in the morning. She wore it all day. Why? She's a first grader. She doesn't know how to stand up to her teachers and say, I can't breathe. Remember, I can't breathe? Do we remember this whole thing? I can't breathe? Well, now we're saying it. The kids cannot breathe. They can't breathe. I can't breathe. I have a deviated septum. When I have it on, it makes me totally squirrely. I can't breathe. It's driving me crazy. The masks don't work anyway. Guess what? People that have had the vaccine, they're still getting COVID. They're actually spreading COVID. We have been lied to. But the worst part is, you have Dr. Harvey Burnett, the president of your board. He's also a sheriff, I believe, or a sergeant in the police department. He works at Andrews University, PhD of the psychology department. And here he is. Let's put the mask on the children. Harvey, you know the truth, and you need to stand up and do your job. In Jesus' name, you all will be judged in front of God at the end.
Melanie Eastley, I think.
Thanks. Harvey, could you say the name again? I missed the last name, and then this one.
Eastley?
No, the
Deborah
person's name.
Stevens was the last, and then Melanie Eastley is current.
Thank you.
I'm short too, like Carla. So, Melanie Easley of Bridgman. And as you stated earlier, I noticed that you're hosting a vaccine clinic for COVID-19 and flu shots on October 26th at your high school gymnasium. This is the start of a dangerous path you are taking. This leads me to inquire, what is your end game? You are opening the door for medical advice and procedures to be conducted at your school. This opens the door, foot right in. It leaves me to ask, what other medical procedures and advice will you host and support? We do know there are other dangerous procedures, such as abortion and gender reassignment surgery, that children 12 and over can choose without parental consent. Will you be hosting or giving advice for any of these, since you are mixing medical procedures and education? I also ask, who is paying for this event? The children have God's heart. They truly are a blessing from the Lord. So this I will proclaim to you. If you follow a path of possibly causing harm to these children, God's children, either physically or mentally, then you are opening a door to God's judgment. You will be held accountable in the highest court. Thank you.
All right, hold on, can't see that. Sorry. Dana Leduc? Okay.
Good evening. I feel as if I stand alone here in a room full of people. My name is Dana, and I live in South Bend, Indiana. I chose Buchanan for my daughter, who was 5 years old, because of excellent recommendations, and I thought it would be a safer place for her because of smaller class size, and I was thrilled to find out that they spoke the Pledge of Allegiance. When she first started, I bought an air purifier, since masks weren't mandated, bought a $200 air purifier for her school. I called every day to make sure that they were opening the windows, that they were opening the door when they were having lunch. I even went to the Board of Health meeting to please ask that a mask mandate be brought into action, because I have worked 7 years in healthcare. I am a housekeeping manager, and I am with all of you when all of this was ever revolving. I did not know what to believe. Every day things were changing. I was pregnant with this guy, and I had to change my clothes 2 times a day because that's what was mandated from my employer, and I had to feed my children because I am a single mother. I was thrilled when the mask mandate was brought into action, only for the Board of Health, and that was on September 7th. And they said that until county stabilizes transmission for 21 consecutive days, that they would keep a mask mandate. And here we are, we're still in high transmission. We're higher than even South Bend, and yet there's masks mandated on the bus, but not in the classroom, which is very ironic. And now, a mere 23 days later, the mask mandate was rescinded due to funding over money. That meant my child's safety money came before my child's safety. And my child is not eligible for a vaccine. I too didn't want to get the vaccine. It wasn't until she started school on August 30th that I decided that I had to get the vaccine, because if she does get the virus, I have to be able to take care of me, my child, and her. And I did get pericarditis from the vaccine. So I also suffer from asthma. I also have a deviated septum. Is it comfortable to wear the mask? Absolutely not, especially when I was 9 months pregnant. I didn't want to wear a mask, but guess what? I was in COVID-positive rooms, and I did not get COVID because I wore my mask, I washed my hands, and I followed the CDC guidelines. They've been ever changing, I understand. But as time goes, we learn more, and that is it. A mask is a simple way to prevent these children from getting this virus. My child is I have had to take my child out of school just out of precaution. So my child is not only being stripped of in-person learning, which is so detrimental to her social well-being. I missed the virtual deadline, which was September 24th, because the mask mandate stopped on September 30th. So I missed that. And now my daughter is missing out on the Buchanan Promise. That's $10,000 to her future education. Am I wrong for that? I don't know. I don't know what is right or what is wrong, and I'm not trying to be right. I just know what prevents this virus. Are masks 100%? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Dana, I have to cut you off. Sorry.
Thank you, John, for your service as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. All right. Crap. Sherry Mick. I'm not going to try. McGahee. Okay.
Yeah, tell me about it. I went from a Williams to a Jones to a McGahee. Okay, so I really don't have anything prepared this evening. I'm a Berrien County citizen and I'm a grandma, and I love this country. And I want to thank anyone in here tonight that served. Thank you very much for really reminding us where we all came from and what this country was founded on. We may not all agree on everything all the time, and that's okay. That is the great thing about living in this country, is that we have a right to a difference of opinion, but we don't have a right to a different set of facts. And what are the facts? How do we even know? We have been lied to so much from the very beginning of this pandemic, this virus, whatever you want to call it. We've been lied to. Do any of you remember? I'd like you to look at me. Would you mind looking at me? Because I'm a human being. Thank you. Mr. I don't know about the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ma'am?
I don't know what it is that you don't understand about patriotism.
Sherry, can we keep it respectful? Okay, thank you.
Well, respect is a mutual thing, isn't
True,
it?
but I need you to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly. We've been lied to from the very beginning. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Okay, that's what they told us. We missed weddings, we missed birthdays, we missed Christmas, we missed Thanksgivings, we missed going and visiting a loved one in the hospital that was dying. We missed all of those things, and we just keep going. Okay, what's the next thing that we're going to swallow? The next thing is vaccines for everyone. How much are we going to take? How much government overreach are we going to allow before we say enough? When are we going to put children first, really? Not money, not the money you get, but their actual health. I'd like to know, maybe, if anyone here knows the statistics of suicide increase, let's say over the last couple years. I'd be interested to know that. It's hard to be a teenager. It's hard to watch your baby, your grandson go off to kindergarten, and the mom is so afraid. She puts that baby in a mask. And as a grandma, I know my daughter loves her children, just as I love my daughter. And I think as humans, we just have to understand that we want to do what is best and look at the real science,
I'm sorry,
not what
Sherry.
Dr. Fauci says.
I got to cut you off. I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. Victory Woodall?
Good evening, Board. Like you said, my name is Victory Woodall. I do have a niece and nephew in Buchanan schools, but I don't live here. I'm part of a group called Berrien County Parents for School Freedoms. We have 2,800 members, proudly, thank you. We have been attending board meetings, Board of Health meetings, commissioners meetings. We leave a bad taste in some people's mouth, and it's unintentional, but we really just want freedom for our kids. We want our kids to be able to breathe fresh air. We want the fear narrative to go away because COVID is here to stay. We're going to have to live with it. And we don't believe that masking or mandating vaccines is the best choice in mitigating. I've heard several experts saying that masking is like 9th or 10th down on the list of best practices for mitigation of a respiratory virus. And I hope you guys will keep that in mind when you're making your policies as far as masking. It's really important to keep that in mind, that hand washing is more important and physical distancing is more important and ventilation is more important and UV lights, as Ms. Johnson brought up. And also the quarantine policies, we've been kind of fighting back on those lately too because they don't make a lot of sense. We're really frustrated. We're really happy with the news that Courtney Davis has resigned as the health officer at the Berrien County Health Department because she's been making policies and recommendations that really do not make sense. Like you were saying earlier, Ms. Robinson, I noticed you kept saying we had to quarantine, have to quarantine, other things we have to do, but that guidance is not mandatory, so you guys don't have to follow it. You don't have to quarantine if there's a close contact. It's not something you have to do. It's something that all the schools are choosing to do at the recommendation of the health department, but you're not required to do that. You don't have to mask. You don't have to quarantine. You don't have to have a return to learn plan, period. And I understand you want to because you want the best health for the children, but none of those things are required. Even Courtney Davis's universal masking mandate that she put in place, which is now rescinded, we fought that in court and we had a court date scheduled for the day after she rescinded it. And I really think that played a big part in her rescinding it. And also, of course, the state budget that was threatening $1.5 million of her $23 million budget for the health department. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in the way that she's making these policies, so we're happy to see her go. We're hoping that she can be replaced with someone who's going to make common sense policies for our kids. So I also want to say that I really enjoy this BUT conversations that you're going to have. I think that's great. It shows me that you're willing to talk to the parents and not just give people their 2 or 3 minutes here at the meeting and then not listen to them anymore. I think that's great. I really applaud you for that, and I applaud your numbers, your the testing numbers that you guys have, fifth in the county. That's great for such a small school. That shows me you guys are doing awesome things here. And so I think a lot of the parents that are attending these meetings and a lot of the parents in our group, we just want to see those choices for our kids' medical to be back in the parents' hands because that's really our job. It's not your job. Your job is to educate the children. It's not to keep them healthy. It's to keep them educated. So I will shut up now, and I just really appreciate the BUT conversations. Again, I just want to applaud you on that. Thank you so much. My kids go to St. Joe, and our superintendent, Jenny Fee, will give us no such time of day, and I'm disgusted with her, and so I really applaud you on that.
Thank you. And Rich McCoy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rich McCoy. From Stevensville. I came down tonight, mostly it started when I caught this letter. Someone posted this letter from Mrs. Robinson about the mask survey. And the first thing that caught my mind or popped into my mind was, why are we surveying what people think about our individual rights, you know? Now it turns out that 60.5% of the people surveyed were for mask optional, which is interesting, and it's a good data point. But, you know, honestly, even if it were 1% for mask optional, that one kid that doesn't want to wear a mask, that's his constitutional right, as far as I'm concerned. You know, this crisis is really tearing our country apart because we seem to be getting away from the core principles that we have here. And I guess it's been going on a long time, but just to give you a flavor of what I mean by that, my son goes to the University of Michigan, and if he hadn't gotten a religious exemption, he was going to get an academic hold and get kicked out his senior year in college. And my daughter, who's a new nurse, and she worked during the peak of COVID before there was a vaccine, and went in day and night whenever they needed her to take care of people here in Berrien County. Basically, she was bullied to get the vaccine and couldn't take the pressure anymore to do it. And you know, and I myself am facing termination on November 22nd because I'm not going to get a vaccination. I'm not going to be told what I must do by the government. This is my choice. And I've been going to lots of board meetings and commissioners meetings, and I want to tell you what I never hear anybody from our government say anything about, and that is our individual liberty and our constitutional rights. Why do I not hear anyone discussing this? It's very disturbing, especially in view of what's going on nationally and how we're being torn apart, and the people who choose to stand up for their rights are being persecuted, being fired from their jobs, and it seems as if the idea is to make all of us into second-class citizens. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just misunderstanding all this. But it's what I'm getting. It's what I'm getting. I mean, I'm facing termination, so that's a real thing, you know. So it'd be good to hear from our government every now and again that you guys remember that we live in a constitutional republic where we have constitutional rights. You guys probably swore an oath to that Constitution. So I'm not sure, you know, in view of the Constitution, I'm not sure where you guys get the authority to basically hold the public education of these kids hostage for a mask mandate. I understand in 1307A, the word health is in there. I've read it.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, Rich. You're at time. Sorry. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item I, adoption of a consent agenda. May we have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes from the September 20th meeting, the Treasury and Expenditure Report from September, and the recommendations for hire for, I'm going to be tested on the first name here, Anizbeth Contreras, Stephen Schaefer, and Nathaniel Will.
Support.
Any question or comments? Roll call.
Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Carl may absent. Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to agenda item J, recommended action other one, Neola first reading. Can I have a motion, please?
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approves the first reading of the following Neola revised policy. Policy 6421 involving purchases budgeted.
Support.
All right. Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item J2, Neola second reading. May we have a motion?
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approves the second reading for the following Neola revised policy 9700.01, which involves advertising and commercial activities.
Second?
All right. And roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item J3, 2021-2022 Administrative Contract Amendment. May we have a motion?
Make a motion that the Buchanan Board of Education approves the amended contract for middle school principal Shelby Beasley.
Support.
And roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. And item J4, 2021-2022 Buchanan Community School Return to Learn Plan Amendment. May we have a motion?
Make a motion that the Buchanan Community School Board of Education approves the amended Buchanan Community Schools 2021-2022 Return to Learn Plan.
Support.
All right. And roll call?
Real quick, was that Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't hear him. All right. Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item J5, 2021-2022 Budget Amendment. May we have a motion?
Make a motion that the Buchanan Board of Education, in accordance with the General Appropriations Act, accepts the Buchanan Community Schools amended budget appropriations resolution for the fiscal year 2021-2022 as presented. Said documents to be entered into the minutes of this meeting and to take immediate effect.
Support.
All right. Any questions or comments? Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item J6, Food Service Salary Schedule.
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approves the new salary schedule for food service employees.
Support.
Any questions or comments from board members?
I will just say that evidently we've never had such a schedule in all these years, so this is, it's needed
together.
and well-deserved. And thank you to Carrie and Becky for working on that, because I know you had to do a lot of background checking and so on. I appreciate that, and I'm sure they do too.
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes?
Ms. Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. You said yes, right?
I did say
I
yes.
couldn't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah. Motion passed.
Very good. Moving on to item K. Question or comments from board members?
I have two things. On the Return to Learn plan, I appreciate that we're using that as guidance, and I heard the word fluid, and I think it's critical to be able to look at the entire picture and and have some guidelines without making it so black and white that there's not a common sense opportunity in there. So thank you for those adjustments. And then the second one was thank you to all of the Buchanan Community School staff, students. They partnered with the Buchanan Tree Friends to make sure that there was a nice representation this weekend, and it was a very cool event to see so many kids excited about, and I know that those announcements were made at the schools, so thank you.
You can see all of them around town. It's awesome. There's tons.
And of course, if we're running on a shortage of crossing guards, so if anyone is interested, please contact the Buchanan Police Department and say you are willing to cross kids. Anything else? All right. Our next board meeting is going to be November the 15th at 6 o'clock, and we stand adjourned.
Thank you. I gotta go to the bathroom.